We are fully into baseball season. We're going to keep the momentum going. We are joined today by Andy Dirks, former Detroit Tiger player, current Detroit Tiger, both a TV and radio broadcaster. Going to ask about his playing days, going to ask about his time currently in the booth with both Jason Benetti and Dan Dickerson. Lots to look forward to on today's episode of Chris and Company. Before we get started with the interview, just a few things I want to get out of the way. First off, thank you very much to everyone for the positive reception to the AJ Hinch interview. Second time that we'd interviewed him, but obviously this one, I don't know, it's becoming a trend now. I hope it can be an annual thing. I was talking to Austin about it. I've talked to several other people about it. I think it is probably, and maybe I'm just a victim of the moment here, maybe the thing I've done in my career that I'm proudest of. I know that there's things I've put out that are way more popular, more well-received, probably appeal to a broader audience, but I really came away from that proud of where we are with our content, and very proud of the fact that I root for a team that has AJ Hinch as their manager. Smartest guy in the world. I mean, he might be the smartest guy in baseball with the way that he talks about his team and breaks things down. I could listen to that guy talk about the sport forever. So that really meant a lot that you guys were so receptive to it, and it meant a lot that he took the time because he didn't have to, and it is one of the more fun, defining things that I've done in my life so far. So I really appreciate it. If you are interested in all of our content, you can go to CastellaniContent.com. That is getting updated every day because this year, for people who might be back on the bandwagon here for baseball season, there is a section on the website specifically for Detroit Tiger post-game videos. So every single one of these from the 2025 season, starting from game 1 all the way through game 162 and hopefully beyond that in the postseason, you can find at CastellaniContent.com. It's all in one place, as are the episodes of I'll Say This, as are the episodes of Chris and Company. So a lot to get excited about there. If you like this podcast and you're watching it on YouTube, you can find us there. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can also find us in audio form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And yeah, let's see. Is there anything else I need to cover here? We are going to have a vlog coming out soon. Austin and I were making the rounds last week when Michigan State, and the Tigers all had games going on in the same night. And we will be out in full force in Comerica this Friday for the home opener. And we're going to be doing some content from there. Last year we did the trivia stuff. I don't know if we're going to do that again or not. I'll think about it. And if we do, I'm going to have to come up with some questions. But I'm so looking forward to getting out there, seeing the fans. It seems like the weather is actually going to be like relatively stable for this time of year in Michigan. So a lot to be excited about. And one more thing to be excited about is we got an interview with Andy Dirks coming up right now. So strap in, folks. You can listen to that. Let's jump right in to our interview with Andy Dirks. Andy Dirks joining the program today, 1 week after we had AJ Hinch on, fully into the swing of things when it comes to baseball season here in 2025. Andy, how are you, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm glad that you finally got some talent on here. You had to have AJ last week, and now you get somebody that has a little more info and knowledge into the game, probably, right?
I mean, he's so. I felt like I had to string him along the whole time. I mean, the guy's just to get an answer from the guy is just a total drag. No, obviously, I can't even pretend to be kidding about that. But no, I'm really super happy to have you on, and there's so much to discuss because you, man, time flies. Because I think it was 2 days ago, I was watching you play here, and I was in high school at the time, and you were making your debut, and so there's a lot of ground to cover. But I do want to start kind of with your time as a player for the Tigers, because I think it's very unique to me that you have insights both of where the organization was when you were a player and kind of where they are now as a broadcaster. But you came up in 2011. It was a series against Toronto, which ironically, just because I remember dates. It was against Toronto a few weeks after Verlander had thrown his no-hitter against them in Toronto. So you were playing them at home this time. This was a team that, came in. It was at a time where they had, it was the Dombrowski era, the Mike Ilitch era. And you're talking a team with Miggy and Verlander. You walk into that clubhouse. Who's the first person that you felt comfortable talking to?
I mean, you know them all from spring training.
That's
and
fair,
I was 24 when I got called up. I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't 20 years old. I'd had experience in baseball. And that spring, I was on the big league side for quite a bit because I basically made it till the end of, when they split camp. And then, so I knew those guys, but still you have to earn respect in a big league clubhouse. Like that's part of the gig. And when you're a rookie, you're a rookie. And I'm not dumb. So, I didn't stir the pot. I wasn't there to act like the big shot on campus. I was happy to be there, happy for the opportunity, and also very privileged that we were an excellent team.
Yeah.
Like looking back, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So every year I played in the big leagues, I went to the postseason. Like it was just the way it was, right? So you think, and then some of the caliber of talent in that clubhouse and in those eras was just unbelievable. And it was definitely a benefit for a guy like me coming up because these guys are so knowledgeable about the game. They know how to prepare. They know what it takes to be a pro at the big league level. So you can just gain so much information quickly from those guys. And I was kind of the younger guy coming in. And so I was there for more of that spark of energy, keep things rocking and rolling. So me and AJ hit it off pretty quick. Austin Jackson, Donnie Kelly, like literally that clubhouse, there wasn't a bad guy. Like some clubhouses, there's some bummer dudes, but that clubhouse, everybody was there, friendly, joking, having a good time. And then when it was time to lock in, we locked in.
Yeah, it's very interesting how I view MLB debuts and that kind of how being 24 does make it a little bit different. But I think the Major League Baseball debut is different than any other sport. I think it's the most daunting. I think it's the biggest shift from being in one league to the next. And we had Justin Henry Malloy on a while back, and I asked him about his debut, and he just said straight up, of all these first pitch could have been 10 feet off the plate, I knew I was swinging at it. I just checked. You took your first pitch. You took the first pitch. In fact, you drew a walk in your first at bat. Where was the adrenaline at that point? Like, and I feel like 2011. So you still had access to data, maybe not with like iPads and stuff the way that we do today. But was your approach to kind of take the moment for what it was, or were you kind of looking to hunt for something?
No, I was there to play. I was very nervous. Like anybody that says they're not nervous on their debut is just lying to try to be cool. Mm-hmm. Like in the media, like when things are going sideways and people try to act cool, like we're humans. We have emotions like everybody else. So I remember running out on the field and they announced your 2011 Detroit Tigers, and I couldn't feel my legs, Chris. They're moving, but it's like, whoa, stands, people, huge stadium. So then the starting pitcher that day, my first start got scratched because of rain delay or rain. We got rained out. Yeah. And that was only the third time I'd been in a big league stadium in my entire life. I went to a St. Louis Cardinals game when I was a kid, and I went to a Kansas City Royals game. This was the next time I'd ever been in a big league stadium. Wow. So when I get out there and I'm looking, I'm like, this place is big. It's huge. Minor league stadiums are shorter. They're smaller. And then the starting pitcher who I drew was a guy named Kyle Drabeck. Now that, for most people, it's like, okay, cool. Kyle Drabeck is the only person to this day to strike me out 3 times in one baseball game.
Really?
That exists in Double-A. So my first year in Double-A, Drabeck was coming up with Toronto. Drabeck, good heater up in the zone type of guy. And I would swing through his fastball, and he just owned me that day. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is the next level at that time. Like, this is what I got to hit guys like this to get to the big league. So of course I faced the guy who struck me out 3 times, and I knew his game. He had a fastball they'd like to throw up in the zone. He had a little breaking ball. I wasn't worried about his changeup at all, and I knew he could be a little sporadic. So first at bat, I'm like, don't be over aggressive, because I know if I get in swing mode against this dude, he's going to punch me out. Mm-hmm. And he walked me, which was a good way to kind of get your feet wet, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think I flew out, and I got a hit, either my second or third at bat. I should know that. Yeah.
I think it was third. I was just checking.
Third at bat. I think I got a little seeing eye ground ball in the 6 hole over between short and third. And then what happens? And this is like, yes, get my hit. I'm so excited. Because once you hit a milestone, it's kind of like some pressure gets released.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like get your first big league hit. My name will be in the books forever. I get the baseball, the whole thing. I go to get off first base, and I'm a very good base runner. That's one of the things the Tigers liked about me. I play fundamental at baseball. I get my lead at first, and I forget that Kyle Drabeck's got a plus pickoff move, and I got picked off on first base in my first big league game after my first hit. And I going back, I'm like, are you kidding me? You know? So I go back into the dugout, and Skip's sitting there at the, thing. And I go down, and he pulls me out of the game. He puts Donnie Kelly in play left. At the time, that's not the reason he pulled me. He came back and told me later. But he was like, hey, good hitting, kid, but don't ever do that again, something like that. Donnie's going to the left, and I'm thinking, oh, man, I just messed this up. Your natural emotions go negative. But he told me later, he's like, no, I was just putting Donnie in because I don't know if I can trust you, because it was a tight game. It was like a one-run game. I just don't know if I can quite trust you in the outfield yet, which is fair. He'd seen me play in the minor. He knew I was a good outfielder, but he wanted Donnie because Donnie had some more experience and wanted to make sure I didn't go out there and zoo a fly ball or something like that. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think with the sometimes intimidating presence that was Jim Leland, I feel like that's not to say that getting picked off is ever easy, but I feel like you go back to the dugout and you see that scowl, you might have an idea of a little bit concerned about how he may react to that. But you also, and you mentioned the rain out a few minutes ago, because you ended up playing a makeup game a few weeks later against Toronto. I'm curious to know if you know where I'm going with this, because you had a front row seat to one of the great Jim Leland ejections. And it was it was in bottom of the seventh against the Blue Jays. You laid down a bunt. It was a good bunt, but it was a very good bunt. Yeah. But you were out. I was out
by half a step to a step. And first base for the people out there, pre-replay, by the way, this is 2011. Ump just called you safe. I mean, just had a brain fart moment, and he took about 2 or 3 seconds. I was just watching it back. You were looking at him because it was a long pause, and then it was just safe. Umps convene, they call you out. Leland comes out, screams at the guy, gets ejected. And I was just watching the video back because John Boy a few years back did a lip read breakdown of the entire thing. And you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. It looked like there was a moment, because Leland's chewing this guy out, where you're standing next to first base coach, maybe trying not to try not to laugh, try not to break character.
Try not to break a smile.
Yeah, is that what it was?
This Grant wants to come out, and because Skip's he's just hammering this guy.
Yeah.
And the guy knows that he's wrong.
Right.
He's trying to play this game with Skip, and Skip's not having it. He said, you said safe, then you said out. He said safe, because back then, once you call it, you call it. Yep. There's no takebacks, right? And on a play like that, can you get help from the home plate umpire? That's not really a play. A play at first base is not a play that you go and appeal to the home plate umpire. What kind of view does he have, right? Yeah. So, but it was classic. It was actually worth getting out now, looking back, because now that's, going to live in infamy as one of Leland's great moments. And Skip always had his players back, and that was one of, he was a fiery guy, right? And Skip always had a player's back. And that's one thing when you played for Skip, man, you always knew no matter what went down, he would take the blame. He would take the brunt. He was there for his guys. No matter how bad you screwed it up, he would always defend you in the media. He would always defend you to other people, to upper management, to whoever, especially if you played hard. And that's why Skip, me and Skip had a good relationship, because he liked the way I played. My style of baseball. It was like, I'm not the most talented, but you know what you're going to get. He's going to play hard. He's going to play smart. And I always respected that he gave me a lot of chances when, really, do you have to give Andy Dirks as many chances as Skip did? Probably not, but he did, and I always appreciated that.
And you played in such a unique era of Tiger baseball, where I think it's the only era that I can remember where there was a time in which it was considered a disappointment if you guys did anything other than not make a deep run to the playoffs or make it to or win the World Series. And with that obviously came just ridiculous expectations in that clubhouse with that group of guys. Did you ever feel any kind of pressure coming in, knowing that, in most clubhouses, 90 wins is, a tremendous season, where in this particular instance with where you guys were at, some people would consider it maybe not good enough?
Yeah, I don't think so. Not with the players.
Mhm.
Because a lot of those guys had a lot of experience, and we've all played sports our whole lives. Like baseball is a game where you're not going to win every game. It is impossible to go 162-0, right? And you're also playing against some really good talent. And one thing you know about baseball is, man, some days it's just not going to go your way. Like you can hit the ball hard, you don't get the hit. You can have great at bats, you can play good defense, you can hit your spots, and the ball 15 hopper through the hole in an infield single, and then next thing you know, a guy hits a 3-run bomb and you lose by a run. So with that understanding, I think most baseball players just as a whole will understand that. Now, with that said, when you're expected to win and win and win, when you go into, I think one time we lost like 5 games in a row or something, 5 or 6 games in a row during the middle of the season, and it was like tragic to everybody, you know? And if you look at those games, like we didn't play that bad. It wasn't our best baseball, but it wasn't 0-6 baseball. Like we had a couple bad breaks, a couple things happened. But the guys in the clubhouse were always good about, you know, keeping things light. Like, hey, it's a long season. Like, don't get bummed out if things don't go your way today. Like, because tomorrow will be your day. And I kind of had that mentality coming up, which helped me out a lot. Like, I never had a massive slump that I can remember that was more than, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 at bats max. I didn't get a hit. Because every day that I was 0 for 4, I knew, hey, statistically, my chances of getting a hit tomorrow are very good, right? And that's kind of the way we approached it. But I don't know. I didn't know anything else but winning. Like my whole life was about winning. And I never played on I don't even know if I ever played on a sub 500 team other than in my life. Maybe sophomore year of football in high school.
So yeah, that's a heck of a track record. Then that's a good statistic to have. I mean, and this carries over to a broadcaster too, because I mean, we made the playoffs with you consistently the three years you were here. We had a 10-year lapse. Now all of a sudden you're in the TV booth and we make the playoffs again. You know, might have been the
Andy Dirks. You want to win? Put Dirks in, right?
Yeah, exactly. It might have been the Andy Dirks curse that's been turned around there. But no,
that one didn't get quite as much publicity as the Red Sox curse, but it was there, right?
It was every bit as important. It felt longer to me, quite honestly, as a Tiger fan. But you know, it was. I'm always interested to ask players who had, you know, maybe weren't star players on that team about this particular thing, which is how you took in the off seasons, because this was a time where Mike Ilitch and Dombrowski were spending a lot of money and they were going out and getting top tier players. And, you know, the famous one is Victor's out. You go get Prince Fielder and you move Miggy to third. And it leads to guys, you know, potentially being, you know, some, you know, second tier guys potentially being out of a gig or you know, having to start the year in the minors. When you were a player on this team in that era, did you look forward to those off seasons because of the kind of firepower that you knew Dombrowski was going to add? Or was there a level of nervousness feeling like, man, if we add somebody, like I could be one of those guys on the outside looking in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And to be honest,
thank you.
I was probably just naive enough to not understand how everything even worked. And it didn't even ever register in my head, like ever. I went and played in the Dominican Republic for 2 winters. So I was playing baseball in the winter too. And I never even once acknowledged that, you know, maybe I show up and I don't have – every year I went in, I had to earn a spot. Like I knew that. Like that was just standard par for the course for me in my developmental years. Like every level I went up, I started at a junior college and I wasn't the starting center fielder. I was the 5th outfielder, ended up being the starting center fielder. I go to Division I. I'm not the starting guy, end up being the starting guy. I go to pro ball, same thing. So like every level that I went up, I had to earn a job, which helps probably in those circumstances because it was nothing new for me. I think in 2012, I went into spring training. It was kind of between me and Cleet Thomas was kind of the mix because Cleet's a very talented player. Dude could hit a ball like so far, like it would make your head boggle. And we went to spring training. I think I led the Grapefruit League in batting, and I think Cleet hit like not good at all. But then still to the end, they weren't going to say who's going to make the team. As far as the first series, we took an extra outfielder. So the first series, even after the first series, we didn't know. So there's always that pressure, I guess, or those things that you might consider in AA. Like our AA team at one time had me, Brennan Bosch, Casper Wells, just in the outfield. all big league guys, right?
Yeah.
So I never looked at the competition of inside of the team, inside of the squad, much at all. I always thought, man, if I can just figure out how my skill set can help this team win games, because at the end of the day, what's the last thing that matters? It's winning games. So if I can figure out how my skill set might help this particular squad win ball games, let me utilize that to the best of its ability and get good at those things. And that's kind of the way I approached it. And then I really enjoyed playing baseball. Like I mean, there's times where it's a drag, like it's long season, but I enjoyed the process of preparing. I enjoyed the process of actually playing. I enjoyed the process of coming in off the bench. Who might I face? What's going to go down? And I think that passion for the game of baseball helped me where maybe other guys don't have it as much. Like I love the details of the game, the little subtle details that might give me a little edge compared to the next guy. So yeah, I was just naive, man. And it was probably a benefit. Like I didn't even know how agents worked and I didn't know. Like the guys now, like there was no YouTube channel on, how this works, how free agency would work or arbitration. Like that some guy handled that. I just played.
Yeah, and there's some guys who benefit from that. I always am curious whenever I bring on players. There's some guys who love the data and they love to dive into it and they feel like it makes them better. And then there's some guys who say, sometimes it's just too much. In fact, I mean, we talked about that with AJ a little bit where, Torque had that quote of like, I just want to simplify things this offseason. That there does become a point where things can get, kind of overwhelming. You had a front row seat to some of the greatest in individual seasons, I mean, I'd say by a Tiger, but really offensively that we've ever seen in Major League Baseball with the greatness that was Miguel Cabrera. You got to see his Triple Crown season. And then he follows it up in 2013 and has a better year, like statistically. Maybe he doesn't win the Triple Crown, but he was damn close. Almost, had a remarkable season, wins his second MVP. When you're going through kind of the reps of a Major League season and you're focused on the day-to-day and winning, every game, do you still kind of have those moments where you step aside and you're like, dude, we are watching something that just doesn't happen all the time with a player like that?
No doubt. I've never seen anything like it. Played baseball my whole life. And that guy, he was just on another level. Like, you hear that kind of token phrase thrown out, like he's just on another level. Mm-hmm. But through those kind of prime Miggy years, like the pitchers just couldn't do anything about it. It was like, it didn't matter how good you are, how good your stuff was, where you located the pitch. You could throw your pitch, he would still hit a double, and he would do it in a way that was pretty effortless. Yeah. And that's something that you don't see often. You see guys go through maybe stretches where, man, they're really playing out of their minds, but that comes to an end and you can tell they are so focused and locked in, like that's not sustainable just because, man, that many games, it's hard to sustain that an intensity, like not a football intensity, but an intensity to where your brain is so locked in that you're just using bandwidth on top of bandwidth on top of bandwidth. Like that won't last forever. But the way he could do it for an entire season in an effortless type of, it looked effortless. He put in the work, he did his thing. And it was, what's really cool was when we needed something, Miggy was there. Like we would go through a little rough phase as an offense, and Miggy would turn us around. Like literally in an at-bat, somebody get a hit, Miggy first pitch, bang. And I mean, he didn't walk that much for as good as he was. He was hitting balls that were out of the zone. Fastballs 95, 96, oppo homer. Balls in off the plate, pull side homer. Balls like down, like sliders down out of the zone, boom, off the center field wall. And that's an impact type of player that you can't replicate because most guys can't do that with those pitches, right? Even the best slugging guys all time, they need it in their little cue box. Mm-hmm. So they draw a ton of walks. Miggy did it without having to draw that many walks. He was banging, man. Yeah. Like first two pitches. It's like, why would you ever throw him a strike anywhere close in the first two pitches doing at bat?
Well, what I always found funny is that because he was a righty, defenses would often play him to pull, and he would just, you talk about effortless, he would just flick the bat out there and go the other way. His ability to go the other way for singles and doubles was unbelievable. And I remember that summer in 2013, there was, I was going into my senior year of high school, and you guys are playing the Royals. It was the ninth inning. I think Aaron Crow was pitching, It was 5-5 game, and Miggy came up, and it was one of those things where he had done it so many times that the crowd was on their feet before once it got to 2-0 or 3-1 because like he's going yard here, like he's on, and he walked him up, hit an opposite field home run. The next day, I think Bruce Chen was pitching. First pitch he sees, he homers again, and it was. I remember, I think even Mario and Pemba at the time was like, they got to find a new league for this guy. I mean, it was really a special thing that we were watching. Last question, kind of about your playing days, but what was more nerve-wracking, your MLB debut or playing in the World Series?
Nerve-wracking in different ways.
Yeah.
Debut is just different because it's just so much focus on you that day. Like usually in a baseball game, there's a lot of, it's kind of, you get into a groove. The World Series, really, I wasn't overly nervous, but I wanted to win. And then when we started stumbling in the offense, our offense we couldn't score any runs. Right. In the World Series. And that's when you can start pressing a little bit, especially because in a normal season, you're kind of like, hey, a couple games is not as big a deal because we're going to turn that around. In the World Series, you don't have tomorrow. You lose one game, that's a big deal, So in the playoff baseball is different than regular season in the fact that every single pitch is just like pins and needles. Like if a pitcher messes up one pitch, it can cost them a game, which can cost you the series. So everything is just magnified to a degree that you're hoping the pitcher screws up. And to San Francisco's credit, you can go back and watch those games. If you watch some of those pitches, like they just did not throw anything over the plate. They just hit corner after spot, which for a guy like me, that makes hitting pretty much impossible. Yeah. Like if they're not throwing the white thing over the white thing very much, like that's the pitches I can hit, And when you see a staff that was dialed in the way they were, man, that made it tough. But I was less nervous in the World Series than my debut.
Do you, and I got to ask because it's been a hotly contested thing amongst Tigers fans for a long time, do you blame that long layoff for why you guys struggled in that World Series, or do you feel like that's kind of a myth?
I mean, you can say, we never make excuses in baseball. Right. We shouldn't. Now in baseball, you play every day. You get accustomed to playing every single day. So having a I don't remember 6 day layoff or a week long layoff
or more,
didn't help. We'll just put it that way. Like that, I don't think that helped our cause. Is that why our offense struggled? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of factors. You could play that series over, 10 times. We win 5, they win 5. Who knows? That was a very good squad. We were a very good team. For them to sweep us, I think, was probably the craziest out of the entire situation. Like, how did we get I couldn't imagine a team sweeping us that year. And then they came out and swept us. But it made it more challenging maybe to keep the offense fresh. But I mean, man, when the lights come on, we were always a team that we strapped it on and could play, man. So we scuffled offensively for those 4 games, and that was it.
At what point in your career did you realize that playing days were going to be over?
In 2014, I had a back surgery in spring training. Trying to get back from that surgery, I had some residual nerve damage that just was not healing well. And then I started a rehab assignment. That didn't end well. I hit a double off the right center field wall, and I cruised into second, and this shooting pain down both my legs. And I was like, that's not good. So then in the offseason, I got picked up by the Blue Jays to kind of see if I could get back to healthy. And then in 2015, I had to have another back surgery, and I was leaned over to the right for like a year, man. I was like, yeah, there's just no way I could take the wear and tear of what a baseball season would do ever again. And that was after 2015, I tried a little bit, and then I realized, I talked to my surgeon. He's like, dude, if you keep at this, like, I can't promise you there's not going to be some permanent issues like for the rest of your life, And those are things as an athlete, your days are coming because everybody's does. Everybody wants to go out on their own terms. They want the big, farewell. But in reality, 95% of big league careers, probably 98% end with an injury or you're not good enough.
Yeah. Very rarely do you ride off into the sunset in the
there's
world.
Very few Miggy situations where, you come out, make the play at first and he earned all that. Right.
Of course.
there's some guys too, that are extremely good baseball players that never made it to the big leagues because of injury, right? Like guys blow out their arms, they blow out their backs, their knees, whatever. And those guys never even got to play in the big league. So I feel very fortunate. Yeah. Did it end the way I wanted? Of course not. Was it hard? Yes. But do I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity? Absolutely.
Were you scared at the time, or had you kind of made peace with it because you'd already gone through so much?
I was angry. No, I was angry. Yeah. I was bitter and angry because it's like, I did everything right.
Right.
Played hard, tried to keep my body in check, try to do all the right things. And there was a period of time I wanted nothing to do with baseball. Like watching the game, I'm like, nope, because it's all the guys you played with, the plays you played against. It's like, then they still are playing and you're sitting at the house, So there was a period of time I just needed to remove myself from baseball for a little while. And then over time, after a couple of years, you start settling into the fact that like, hey, it's not like that was a great opportunity. Let's move forward in life. And then after my second back surgery, about, I don't know, six months later, I got into real estate and then started putting my bandwidth into that and learned a whole new skill set. And it's been awesome, man.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, it's almost like a breakup in a weird way, where it's just like
I would say it's like this.
Go ahead.
It's like a close family member dying.
Yeah,
is how because it's such a part of your life. Like I've done that since I was a kid, and then for I don't know 12 years. Like once you hit college level, it's on. Like that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And so for all those years, it was baseball, 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 and then all of a sudden, not only is it like gone, it's like gone. Like you can't play anymore. And it's like, well, that's what I thought I was going to be doing for at least the next, 5, 6, 7 years. But you kind of have to mourn the loss. I think any athlete that's been through it would understand it. Of that's like what you've been for so long. And now it's like, you don't get to be that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Was there a day or maybe a moment where you kind of realized that the grieving process was over, that you kind of moved on to that next stage in your life?
I think probably my faith, like I got back into my faith much more as the years kind of went through, because it's kind of like you're asking questions like, why has this happened to me?
Yeah.
Why me instead of them? And why do they get to do this and I don't? You start feeling sorry for yourself and you go in the little dark hole, but then you're telling everybody you're okay. And then, I got just a better perspective with my faith. And I was like, it's a game. It's a game I love. It's a game that I put a lot into, but there's a lot of life ahead. Right. And it was kind of that understanding of like, man, there is so much more to this than just being a player, even inside the game of baseball. Like at some point it was going to end anyways. And I think once I started seeing other guys kind of in my era start hanging them up a little bit too, I think that was like a reality too. Like really, they played for another 3 years,
right.
3 years goes by fast. Right.
Yeah.
So I think once those things started happening, I was like, that there was an end to that regardless. And I think that gave me some more peace. And then, having my family, my wife started having kids, like you get redirected into what's truly important. And my perspective started shifting into, baseball as the game that I love, but here's life. And there's an awesome life outside of baseball.
And then, you end up circling back around to the broadcasting stuff. And it's been very interesting over the last few years, because like I said, time flies, because between you and Austin Jackson and Alex Avila, you guys in the booth now, I feel like I was watching you a week ago, playing the World Series. How did this all come about? Because you were doing real estate stuff. Was it something that, did you know that there was an open position? How did you get into the broadcasting world?
Man, I didn't even pursue it. I was, chilling at the house, doing the real estate gig, and Tigers called and they're like, hey, do you want to fill in and do a radio spot for one of the games? And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds fun. Go up and hang out with Dan for a while. I love Dan, and did that. I did one in like 2019, a couple in 2019, then COVID hit. So it was, lockdown. They didn't, for good reason, you can't have people in and out. And then 2022, that's when Jim Price started having some health issues, and I'd filled in a few spots early in the season, and then that was a few more, and then that was a few more. And they kept asking me, hey, do you want to do it? And we just kind of worked together and did some more. And enjoyed it. And then unfortunately, Jim Price passed away, which was like not ideal. But with that, they needed somebody to fill a spot. So then I jumped in and started doing a few more, which led to 2023, where I did, or maybe it was 2023. 2023 is the year Jim Price passed. So then 2024, last year, they're like, hey, do you want to do more? And I'm like, yeah, but I can't do like them all, So we kind of came up with a schedule and on the fly that kind of made sense. And I did about half the games, radio. And then towards the end of last year, they were like, hey, do you want to try the TV? And I'm like, sure, why not? It's fun. The way the Tigers team was made it a lot more fun for me because they're young, they're athletic, they're energetic, they've got some promising young stars. So started doing the TV thing, and all of a sudden the Tigers go on this crazy run, and then it's like it's on. It is on, and it had just a blast last year with Benetti and Dickerson, and those guys are amazing. They're fun to work with.
What's the biggest change that you've seen in the organization from when you were a player compared to now being a broadcaster?
With the Tigers specifically?
Yeah, specifically. Yeah, specifically with the Tigers organization.
I would say, like when I was a player, the front office was a win at all costs, including money, right? Mm-hmm. Less development, more let's get a team on the field that can win a World Series. However that shakes out, what that looks like. Yeah. So the minor leagues, we were a little more gutted when I came through.
Yeah.
Right. So we had some prospects, and we had a couple good little streams of prospects, but nothing like we have now. Right. Where this organization, this group of with Scott Harris, they're like, we want to develop these guys in the minor leagues the way we want them developed, and we're going to bring them up through our system. Right now, they'll probably, they'll trade some guys at some point, I would imagine. But that idea of developing our own players to come up through the system is much more a goal with this organization, and to bring more youthful players in, where, when historically with Illich, like with the hockey team, it's bring the veteran players in, pay them money. Let's win that way, where they're like, hey, baseball's getting more youthful. We're seeing younger and younger players making bigger impacts. So let's get these young guys up and be an athletic team that can run around and play. And so those are the biggest differences, probably.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things, just in terms of the way that they go about their day-to-day is, and AJ is unique with this, is the amount of platooning and pinch hitting. Yeah. Do you ever think about like how you would have adjusted as a player if that would have been your role? Because I mean, he pinch hit more than any manager in baseball a year ago. And I've talked about it with some other guys, like one, that requires a lot of buy-in from the players, and a lot of kind of leaving egos at the door. And two, it requires you to always be prepared and never knowing when your number's going to be called. Have you kind of developed a greater sense of respect for these young players with the fact that there's not always a guaranteed start, but there's probably going to be a guaranteed moment in which they see the game?
Yeah, no, that takes some fortitude. And it takes, like you said, check your ego at the door. Mm. Like, what's the best for the team? And AJ is really good at getting buy-in because his guys respect him. Like, Leland could ask me to do whatever. He'd been like, Dirks, you need to catch. Let's put it on. I'll do my best, And that's a buy-in from players to respect the manager in a way that makes sense. And it also works when you have younger players, part of that developmental process, to where this is the way they know how it's done. And if you want to be on the big league roster, this is how it's done. And if you want to push back, well, you better do something spectacular, right? Mm-hmm. And when I pinch hit a decent amount, being a left-handed hitter off the bench, and I was a good defender. So I could always come in defensive replace, like if Rayburn was in the game, something like that. I'm probably coming into defensive replace or pinch hit if they bring in a nasty righty, right? So, yeah, the way he does it, I think the guys just have to be in the game more, which is good because they're watching every pitch. They have to kind of be locked in from inning one, as opposed to sitting around and shooting bubble gum up into the stands and hot-footing people. They're more like, hey, I'm here. And a lot of these guys are at the stage in their career where they're trying to become established big leaguers, which is a good place to be.
Yeah, and I think it's the buy-in has obviously been a huge part of it, and for that to kind of become the identity of the team and having an identity just as a major league club, I think is so important, and AJ's done a brilliant job of that. When you played, what kind of relationship, if any, did you have with the team's broadcasters? Like, I mean, I'm sure occasionally you guys would cross paths, but what was it like when you were a player?
Yeah, I mean, they would always be in the clubhouse, cutting it up, hanging out, talking. They were great. Mario was great. Rod is Rod. Love Rod, and he's Rod Allen. He's got his own little Rod Allen persona about him. And then Dan was awesome. Love Dickerson. But all those guys were very respectful. They were very courteous of understanding that you're there to do a job and you're trying to prepare, and knowing how to fill out the room, I guess. Because I was always like, I'm wide open. You want to talk? Let's talk. Because most of the guys didn't want to talk to me as much as they'd want to talk to Miggy.
Right.
So, but it was always funny. The guys after the games and stuff. I feel for the media guys sometimes, because if there's a couple bad games or a guy has, it's like, man, they got to go get Dirks, because the other guys they're already in the shower. Got to get Dirks. Get Donnie Kelly.
Yeah. How much familiarity did you have with Jason Benetti before you started working with him?
None. Zero.
Were you aware of his existence?
Mildly at best. So I just don't watch a lot of stuff on the TV personally. Yeah. I'm a very energetic, on the go kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So when I heard that he was coming to Detroit, I was like, oh, cool. Who's this guy? And then you look at a couple of his clips. I'm like, he's got a good voice. Mm-hmm. Which he's got a good voice, but I won't ever give him more than that.
That's it. That's it. You're cutting him off.
You got a decent voice for broadcasting, Benetti. Okay, we get it.
Yeah. No need to show off.
I wasn't in that world. Was not my world. The broadcasting, I'm still learning every day about who's in charge of what, and now that I'm in it more, you learn more about Ernie Harwell, and you learn more about the history of broadcasting and the guys who kind of went before, and kind of set the standard for what a good broadcast might look like today.
Does it almost bring you back to your playing days, in the sense that when you're a player, it's, every day is a new matchup and you're looking at different pitchers and different lineups and, how to succeed. Whereas it's kind of similar with a broadcast where you get a certain amount of data for that particular game. Does it kind of bring you back of that kind of process of going through the day-to-day, so to speak?
It does. And one thing it's done is it's unlocked a portion of my brain that was not in use for about 10 years. Yeah. I have this vault in my brain, Chris, that's loaded with information that I forgot that I had. And it's funny because all of a sudden I get it locked into a baseball game and I start seeing things, just from all the years I played and watching games and observing and playing in tons and tons of baseball games, is you pick up all these little things that make the game either more enjoyable or they make the game can kind of put it in your advantage. I absolutely love the pitcher batter matchup.
Me too.
That to me is, if you can understand that, and you can dig deep into what's a pitcher thinking, what's a hitter thinking, what's the count, what's the situation, what might he try to be doing? Oh, the pitcher fooled him. What's the next step in the chess match? I am in love with that part of the game, because until that pitch gets delivered, nothing else happens. And the thought process that goes inside these guys' head, defensive alignments and all the fun things, it just unlocked that portion again. And it made all of a sudden I'm I feel like I'm on the field almost,
Yeah. And especially, I think it makes it more interactive with the amount of data that we have nowadays. You have stuff like Pitching Ninja stuff, which I think is a great resource, where it's, I don't know, it's very funny, the generational gap, because I'll watch a game with my dad and he'll get really upset when a guy strikes out or chases. And it's when you see the tunneling overlays of Pitching Ninja and you realize how disgusting this guy's stuff is, you're kind of explains why guys might chase out of the zone every so often. Yeah, you mentioned it a minute ago, but obviously the run this team had a year ago, in which they became, I mean, it was no joke. They became the story of baseball for a month and a half. And I guess maybe adjustment isn't the right word coming from me, but is there sort of a different energy that's brought when you guys realize, man, this team, these are now meaningful games, when as of 2 weeks ago, we thought that this thing was just kind of going to just go the way that we expected?
Yeah, there's definitely more energy when you're winning. There is everything: fans, the city, the players, the broadcasters, the media, the front office, the coaches. Winning is attractive, right? And I guess not just winning, but competing.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference. Like even when you lose, if you went out and competed well and you put your best foot forward, like as a fan of the game, that's what we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see guys who go out and compete. And that's what this Tigers team like did in the second half of last year after basically the trade deadline. I mean, they were competing at a level. We talk about that bandwidth. You know, I was telling about guys, it's hard to sustain for a whole year.
Yeah.
What they were doing is hard to sustain for a week. They did it for a month and a half.
Yeah.
Right. To where, I mean, they were out there to die on that field. When Sweeney ran into Riley Green on that pop-up in Baltimore, I said he would die on that field. Like that's the intensity they're playing with, right? Which, how can you not fall in love with that?
Yeah.
Like they're out there putting it out there, comeback wins, never out of the ball game, didn't matter who's on the mound. And then you know, as a fan, you're like, hey, we're not out of this. Let's go.
Yeah, no, it was, dude, I told AJ this, I've said this it was some of the most fun I've ever had watching sports because there was little expectations to it, you know, like with the, you know, like I'm a Michigan football fan and, you know, of course winning the national championship was amazing, but that team came with these remarkable expectations where it's like, you know, there's a certain ladder you have to climb. This was just, and I'm glad you bring up the idea of like just competing again. Cause one thing I've always said is like, look, man, winning in this game is hard and building a good team is hard. I miss, hey, man, we're 2 games back of the Twins and Verlander's pitching in a 3-game set. Like, just kind of check scoreboard watching and checking that stuff. It'd been so long since we'd kind of gone through that and to experience that and then end with this team not only making the playoffs, but winning a playoff series. It was, you know, it was amazing, man. It was remarkable. You know, and you've now you do both radio and TV. And I think, I don't know. It depends on who I ask, I guess. But most of what I do is on camera, which is for some people good and for some people bad. But do you have is it more nerve-wracking with television because, I mean, the camera's constantly on, or do you try to kind of block out the noise and just go through the steps of the broadcast?
I just do it. Like the cameras don't bug me. And I've done a ton of public speaking and I've done a ton of stuff in front of cameras. And presentation, you name it. Like the last, I don't know, 8 years, probably my real estate experience helps just because, I mean, you're in front of people all the time. I do huge presentations in front of big crowds and all sorts of stuff. So like for me, the camera is just an avenue to the fan. So when I'm talking to the camera, I'm not talking to the camera. I'm talking to the person that's just like me. It's just a fan, somebody that loves the game. They love the Tigers. They want to see a great baseball game. They want to know a little bit more maybe about what's going on inside of the game, maybe something that they can learn, they can grow in. And I'm a big believer in, like with broadcast, is keeping it simple, fun, and engaging in a way that anybody can enjoy it, right? And we'll deep dive into some analytics at times, but a lot of it is pretty common sense, right? Baseball is a game of common sense. Once you understand the details, the little intricacies of it, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand baseball, to understand it really well and have like a PhD in baseball, which is good for me because I'm not a rocket scientist. And I didn't even finish my 4-year degree in general studies, but I have a PhD in baseball, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this game so fun and appealing is like, if I'm comparing the personalities of AJ Hinch and Sparky Anderson, they couldn't be more different, right? And yet, both of them elite at what they did in terms of knowledge of this game and the way that they manage the game. And I feel like that's what makes this game so fun and appealing is that it is kind of broad and anybody can get to a point where they're starting to understand it. And I think that is so important. I think it's why the broadcast crew, the way I have now, is connected with people is like, it's never a good idea to think that it's bigger than it actually is. You know, this is fun. And it's like we get to talk about a kid's game. It's great. And so I think, and one thing, I don't know how much attention you pay to this stuff and you're a smart guy. So I would imagine you probably try to avoid a lot of it, but like in general, the reception to your guys' broadcast and what you do with Benetti and, Danielle and everyone, like you guys have done a great job. You genuinely have. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's hard for me to ask a question like this because I don't want to disparage what came before, but I guess, do you feel like do you have a sense of pride in the way that this has all kind of come together where this broadcast crew is, and it was recently voted, I think, one of top 5 best by Awful Announcing recently. I mean, it's been kind of a resurgent thing over the last few years. I don't know if I really have a question here. I'm kind of rambling, but just like, does that?
No, I mean,
that has to make me feel good. Yeah.
Anything I do, I want to do well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's a credit to the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without the fans, we don't even have a game, man. Like, there's not even a game to go watch if there's not fans that are enjoying the game. And in my playing career, Detroit was so good to me. Like, dude, I wasn't an all-star. I never made an all-star team. I never, I did I played some pretty good baseball, but they didn't have to love me the way they loved me. Like, after I got done playing, Chris, there's people that would come up on the random Tuesday at the 7-Eleven and be like, "Hey, Dirks, man, loved when you played," they don't have to do that, but they did, right? And Detroit, to me, has a place in my heart that I want everybody to enjoy Detroit baseball. I want them to be able to watch a broadcast to where, man, if they had a terrible day at work or if they're struggling in something, here's their moment to just enjoy something entertaining, fun. It's a great game, and walk away from it feeling better. Right. And that energy for the game, I think, is something that a lot of broadcasts can miss out on. Like because at broadcasting, there's a balance. Like, I love Detroit and I'm a fan of the Tigers, but there's other teams that got great players and there's other teams that do amazing things. And you don't want to be the fanboy in the broadcast booth. But at the same time, when Kerry Carpenter hits a massive go-ahead home run, like, my heart goes, woo, let's go, I can't, I'm not going to stop that, and that it's because it's authentic. And I think the people can relate to that.
And I think that's what Detroit is that I've noticed, like, in my experience doing what I do, like, it's a very smart fan base. Like, when it comes to all sports, but especially baseball, like, their understanding of the game, I probably biased on my part, but I would say is ahead of a lot I other fan bases.
Oh, you're right. You're 100% correct there.
I think so. Like, last year, with the amount of chess that AJ was playing, I felt like the way that the fan base just understood that. And even like, and you still see like the Twitter arguments about like Kerry Carpenter getting at bats against lefties and stuff like that. But even that, I feel like, requires a level of knowledge of the game where it's like, why isn't he versus why is he? And it makes like the actual kind of ins and outs of the game way more fun. And I also think, and this is why baseball is so awesome, is the connection you make with the younger players. And I think it's why this team is so likable. Is the fact that it feels like, as corny as this sounds, we see guys grow up. Like, you came up through our system. We saw you make your debut, and we remember your first home run and your first grand slam and your first big hit. Like, the guy behind me, Tarek, I brought it up with AJ last time I talked. Like, we were streaming his minor league starts, just hoping, I hope this guy can be a good pitcher. And it's like now seeing these guys kind of come together. That's why I think the developmental thing is going to really work and connect with people with Scott Harris, because those are like Detroit classic stories that we love of, like, that there are guys, like even, Torkelson, with all the struggles that he had, like, people that last week been going nuts, being like, this is awesome. Like, he's back. That's our dude, so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Look, it's been great to see you back, and you guys do a remarkable job, and I really do mean that. And with what you do on TV, and obviously what you're doing on radio with Dan, it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, it makes me feel a bit old, which is the only downside. Just because.
How do you think it makes me feel when you're talking about watching me in high school?
Oh, well, my apologies, but like I said, time flies, man, and I mean it with all love, because those were these things I'm bringing up. They were very important memories and positive memories for me, both as a fan and as somebody who's been able to do this. So, I appreciate you doing this, and I also appreciate just the energy you guys have brought to the broadcast over the last few years. It's been, and what you're going to continue to bring. It's been a lot of fun.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I know, and
we're just scratching the surface of an era of Tigers baseball that will be as fun as it's ever been in the history of the franchise. I really do believe that. I think in the next 5 to 6 years, we're going to have a stretch here, and hopefully longer than that. But I know within this next 5 to 6 years, right in this time frame from now, we're going to have some really fun summers, and it's going to be exciting baseball. And as long as I can keep Benetti from getting too far off, We'll be all right.
He's somebody you got to hold in check, I'm sure. I mean,
Come here, Eddie. Come here.
He's such a wild card, but it's and I agree with you, man. And it's I think that's where broadcasters can be very important, because you mentioned Rod and Mario earlier, and there's obviously a discourse about them sometimes, but I will always sing their praises because they were great, and they were also the voices of a awesome time of Tiger baseball. Like every big regular season moment I associate with their voices. And I remember saying this when we hired Benetti, is that I hope it's the same thing with this current crew. And last year I think was probably the beginning of it, and we got a long season ahead. So I appreciate you doing the show, man. We'd love to have you on again at some point in the future, but enjoy this season. I don't know, maybe I'll see you out there on opening day. I'm not sure, but thanks again, man. This is really meaningful for us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Talk baseball anytime, man.
Appreciate you. Oh, that was fun. That was fun. That was one where I felt like I might have rambled a little bit, but I was telling him after we stopped recording, like, dude, I could have gone game by game doing a 3-hour podcast just talking about that era of Tiger baseball. I mean, we didn't even get into like Verlander's MVP season or anything like that. I hope I was able to cover all the stuff you guys wanted me to cover. But yeah, no, this is these last few weeks. And we pay attention to the numbers, and we want the numbers to do well, but we also don't want to let it go to the wayside. The fact that like we've actually developed some pretty good relationships within the organization, and that really does mean a lot. And I know it means a lot to Austin as well. This is my squad, and I'm going to I love doing I'll Say This, and then the post-game videos for the other teams I love, but this Tiger stuff really, I connect with it. And I think the big takeaway that I get from all this, and I'll talk more about it on I'll Say This, is just the fact that I really do think everyone in the organization, from the manager to the starting pitcher to the broadcasters, are all moving in one direction. I think that there is such a sense of optimism here. And look, that's not to say we haven't heard that in the past, but I can't remember hearing it unanimously like this. Like you would hear one person say, hey, I think they're going to be pretty good, and another person who would be kind of quiet, and another person would say they're going to be kind of bad, and then people would leave and go to other teams, and you just kind of question the culture. There's no question of culture here with anybody, and I think that Andy's like positivity is a reflection of that, and that goes all the way back to Scott Harris and obviously what AJ's doing as well. So yeah, really fun interview. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to that. I try not to ramble too much. Maybe I did. I don't know. I ramble in life, so cut me a little bit of slack. But thank you very much to Andy Dirks for joining the program. We will be back next week with another episode. We haven't locked down a guest yet, but I will let you know when we do. Like I said, we're entering that point of the year, and I want to capitalize on the Tiger stuff. But we are entering that point of the year where I want to get a little bit more diverse with the guests, because I love having our finger on the pulse of Detroit and Michigan sports. I think that we've developed some really good relationships. It means a lot to be able to kind of sit down and talk with journalists, with athletes, with managers, coaches, and kind of be able to pick their brains about certain things. But the original intent of this show was I just want to interview people that I find interesting. And we've done that so far, but that also means that it can extend beyond just the Michigan sphere, so to speak. And I feel like the baseball season, now that football's still a ways away, college basketball's done, maybe that's our opportunity. Just food for thought. But at the same time, I could do Tiger stuff for the rest of my life and be very happy. Okay, you can find us on CastellaniContent.com. All of our content can be found there. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Going to continue to roll out the content. I will see you guys at opening day, the home opener, this Friday against the Chicago White Sox. Hopefully that will be a Tigers win. We'll be out there creating some content. Thank you to the guys who've been on board. We are growing and we're trying, and that's kind of the best that we can do right now. I can't make any promises to anybody about, we're going to be here by this date, but the worst thing you can do is not put in the effort. And I know that we're putting in the effort, and shout out to Austin Sisler, who continues to be my right-hand man and one of my best friends, and a guy who is absolutely put his faith in me, and I will hope to be able to reward him. He's working really hard. So appreciate you guys. I will talk to you real soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you to Andy Dirks. Peace and happiness.
We're all behind our baseball team. Go get 'em, Tiger. World Series bound and picked. kicking up steam.